When I opened my eyes, the first thing I noticed was the smell. It wasn't Michael's cologne. It was something sharper, unfamiliar, like cedarwood and a hint of laundry detergent I didn't recognize. I blinked, trying to adjust to the morning light filtering through the half-closed blinds, and instinctively turned to my left, expecting to see my husband's tousled hair and the slow rise and fall of his chest. But what I saw made my entire body seize up in cold, paralyzing fear. There was a stranger in my bed. He was lying there, peacefully asleep, on Michael's side of the bed using Michael's pillow. For a few moments, I couldn't breathe. I just stared at the man, unable to move, unable to speak. Dark hair, strong jawline, faint stubble, probably mid-30s. Definitely not Michael. My brain scrambled for an explanation. Was this some bizarre dream? Had I wandered into the wrong apartment after a 12-hour ICU shift? Slowly, carefully, I started to pull away, inching toward the edge of the bed. But then he stirred, his brow furrowed and his eyes opened, steely gray, alert, confused. We locked eyes for a long, excruciating second. "Who are you?" he asked, voice raspy from sleep, but not aggressive. "I should be asking you that," I whispered, gripping the blanket to my chest. "Why are you in my bed? In my apartment?" He sat up fast, startled, scanning the room. "Your apartment?" "I live here," he said, frowning. "I got back from a business trip late last night. This is my place." I shook my head violently. "No, my husband and I have lived here for 6 months. We have a lease. This is our home." Still holding the sheet around me, I stumbled out of bed, my legs barely supporting me. The man, who soon introduced himself as Andrew Foster, followed me into the hallway and pointed toward the living room. "Look, I'm not trying to scare you," he said calmly, "but I have the ownership documents. I bought this place 3 years ago." He reached into a drawer and pulled out a folder. Inside were official-looking papers with seals, signatures, and dates. His name, the address, all matching. "No, this can't be right," I murmured, flipping through them with trembling hands. "We rented this place through a real estate agency. We paid a deposit, first month's rent. My husband signed everything." "Can I see the lease?" he asked. I nodded, feeling sick, and retrieved the yellow folder we kept in the top drawer of the dresser. I handed it over, watching as his eyes scanned the pages. His expression changed. What had been confusion now shifted into concern. "This is a fake," he said slowly. "Not even a good one. I've never authorized anyone to rent this apartment. I've been away for work in Dallas for 6 months. I just got back last night." I sat down hard on the edge of the couch, my mind spinning. None of this made sense. Where was Michael? Why hadn't he told me? I grabbed my phone and called him. No answer. I tried again, voicemail. Michael always picked up. Even in meetings, he'd at least text back. My heart started pounding. Something was wrong. "I need to call him again," I said, dialing with shaking fingers. Andrew turned to give me privacy, stepping toward the window. But it was the same. Voicemail. Again and again. "He's not answering," I whispered. "He always answers me. Always." I stood, walked toward the bedroom closet, flung it open, and froze. Michael's suits, his ties, his carefully pressed shirts, everything was still there. But Andrew stepped beside me and opened the other side of the closet. "These," he said slowly, pointing, "none of these are mine. And my things, they're all gone." I stared at the familiar navy blue blazer Michael wore to important meetings, the striped tie I gave him for our anniversary. How could this be happening? My husband, the man I trusted, had been living in a stolen apartment? Andrew pulled out his phone and made a call. "Roman? It's Andrew. Do you know if anyone was using my place while I was gone?" He paused, listening. 3 months ago, a guy moved in, said he bought the place. He glanced at me. Did he say his name? Another pause. "Michael Russo. Thanks." I sat down again, this time on the floor, my back against the cold wall. The name hit like a brick. "That's my husband." Michael. And for the first time, I felt the full weight of what was beginning to unfold. This wasn't just a mistake. It was a betrayal. I must have sat there for 10 minutes without moving, just staring at the wall. Everything felt unreal. The warmth from the night before, the familiarity of our home, it was all a lie. My stomach churned as I forced myself to stand up and go back into the bedroom. I opened every drawer, every cabinet. Michael's things were there, yes, but only the ones that didn't matter. A few shirts, some socks, a cologne bottle half empty on the dresser. The laptop he always used? Gone. His passport? Gone. Credit cards, bank statements, files? All vanished. The essentials were missing. I opened the nightstand on his side of the bed. That's when I saw it, a plain black folder wedged in the back, hidden beneath some old receipts. I pulled it out, my hands trembling. Inside were documents, strange documents. Fake leases. Photocopies of IDs with different names. None of them his. But the face on each? Slightly altered photos of Michael. Different hairstyles. Different facial hair. Slight tweaks. My throat closed. What was this? There were photos of keys, floor plans of various apartments, notes scribbled in Michael's handwriting, aliases, schedules, dates. My fingers went cold. Andrew, I called, barely able to speak. He stepped into the room, and when he saw what I was holding, his face turned grim. We sat down on the edge of the bed. I laid out the contents of the folder on the comforter. These can't be real. I don't understand. Andrew picked up one document, read silently, then looked at me. He wasn't just squatting here. He's been doing this for a while. This is a system. He's impersonated multiple people, rented or used several places under different names. And from what I can tell, he's good at it. My hands went to my temples. I was trying to breathe, but every inhale hurt. Michael's a real estate agent, I whispered. He knows the industry, the paperwork, the language. He used to talk about finding the perfect deal all the time. I thought it was just his passion for work. I didn't know he was. A knock on the door snapped me out of it. Andrew looked through the peephole. Neighbor, he said. He opened the door. An older woman with kind eyes stood outside. Andy, you're back, she said with a surprised smile. I thought you were still in Texas. I just got in last night, Andrew replied. This is Maria. She's been living here. Can we ask you something? The woman glanced at me with curious concern. Sure, dear. Do you remember when someone moved in across the hall? 3 months ago, a man, maybe mid-30s, dark hair, said he bought the unit. Oh, yes, she nodded. Polite man. Said he just closed on the place. A few days later, I started seeing his wife too. You, I suppose. I gave a weak nod. And lately? Have you seen him? Andrew asked. She frowned, thinking, well, not this week. But 2 nights ago, I saw him with a huge duffel bag. Looked like he was heading out on a trip. At hour 2, around midnight. That's when it hit me. That night, I'd been working a double shift at the hospital. They'd asked me to cover for a sick colleague. I didn't get home until after 2 a.m. He waited until I was gone, until I couldn't come home early. He planned it. As soon as the neighbor left, I turned to Andrew, my voice shaking. He studied my schedule. He always asked about my shifts, when I worked days, when I worked nights, when I had weekends off. I thought it was just him being thoughtful. But now, I see it. Andrew's face darkened. He planned this down to the hour. That duffel bag? Probably full of everything he didn't want to leave behind. He sat down beside me again. Maria, we need to face the truth. Your husband isn't just hiding. He's running. Running from what? From whom? Or from what he's done? I nodded slowly, numbness giving way to a deep, aching fear. The man I married, the life we built together, might not have existed at all. And if that was true, what else had he lied about? I don't remember walking to the kitchen. My body was moving, but my mind was detached, floating somewhere between shock and disbelief. I gripped the edge of the counter just to steady myself. The world around me felt blurry. The apartment, the place I had called home for 6 months, suddenly felt foreign, like a movie set left behind after filming. I pulled out my phone again and stared at Michael's name in my contacts. I didn't dial. I just stared, hoping, somehow, that it would ring and he'd call first. Tell me it was a misunderstanding, that he was coming home. But I knew better. A thought struck me, sharp and terrifying. Our savings, the account we'd built together, dollar by dollar, month by month for 5 years. The account we'd said was for a down payment on our own home someday. I opened my banking app, hands shaking, and stopped breathing. Balance. $0. I blinked. Looked again. There had to be a mistake. I scrolled down to view the transaction history. 3 days ago, a full withdrawal. Every last cent gone. I clutched the phone to my chest, feeling the blood drain from my face. My knees buckled, and I dropped onto the floor. He took everything, I whispered. He drained our account. Andrew crouched beside me. How much? He asked gently. I could barely get the words out. $200,000. It was our entire savings, he sat back, jaw clenched. Now it makes sense, he muttered. He didn't just want free rent. He was staging an exit. The apartment, the fake documents, your money. It was all part of the same plan. I closed my eyes, trying to hold back tears. How could I not have seen this? I'm a nurse. I'm trained to notice changes in behavior, signs of distress. I work in trauma care, for God's sake. And I didn't notice the man I lived with for 5 years was lying to my face. Andrew didn't answer right away. Instead, he handed me a glass of water. We all have blind spots when it comes to the people we love, he said softly. You weren't ignoring red flags. You trusted him. That's not a weakness. That's what love is supposed to be. But it didn't feel like love anymore. It felt like I had been living in a beautifully painted illusion, crafted by a master manipulator. I need to go to the police, I said, my voice steadier now. I don't even know what I'll tell them, but I can't just sit here. He stole from you. He stole from me. He's probably done this to others. Andrew nodded. I'll go with you. We got to the police station just before noon. The place smelled like old coffee and cheap cologne. The front desk officer gave us a tired glance and asked us to wait. I sat on one of the hard chairs against the wall. Fingers knotted together so tightly they hurt. I felt like a criminal just being there, even though I was the one who'd been robbed. A few minutes later, a woman in plain clothes approached us. Mid-40s, sharp eyes, firm voice. Detective Carla Bennett, she introduced herself. I handle financial and property fraud. I understand you want to file a report. I nodded and followed her into a small, cluttered office. The blinds were closed. There were wanted posters on the wall and a faint humming from a desktop fan. She turned on a recorder and gestured for me to begin. Take your time, she said. Start from the beginning. So I did. I told her everything, from how I met Michael at the cafe by the hospital, how we moved in together, how we'd been married for 5 years, how he brought me to this apartment and said it was a great deal through a friend in real estate, how I'd trusted him with everything. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair. This isn't the first time I've heard something like this, she said. But your case, it's unusually well executed. Whoever this man really is, he's not working alone. These kinds of schemes often involve multiple people. One finds the vacant property. Another handles document forgeries. Someone else lures the target. I was the target, I whispered. I was just convenient. She didn't argue. Andrew pulled out his phone and showed her the photos of the fake leases, the IDs, the notes. Her brows drew together. These look professional. You're lucky you found them. I didn't feel lucky. I felt hollow. Detective Bennett looked me straight in the eye. Right now, all the evidence suggests you're a victim, but we'll still need to verify everything. Interviews, signatures, financial records. This won't be over quickly. I nodded. I just want the truth. She paused. He might contact you again. If he does, let us know immediately. Do not engage. As we left the station, I felt a strange calm settle over me. Not peace, but clarity. The kind that comes after a storm has torn everything apart and left you standing among the ruins, forced to look at what's left. And what was left was me. I was still processing everything we'd told the detective when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Chicago area code. For a brief second, I froze. Then my thumb hovered over the screen, and I picked up. Maria! The voice said, calm and steady, too calm. It's me. Michael. His voice sent a chill through me, not because it was unfamiliar, but because it sounded normal, as if none of this had happened, as if he hadn't just vanished and stolen our life savings and left me sleeping in a stranger's home. Where are you? I snapped, pacing the sidewalk in front of the station. What the hell is going on, Michael? Why aren't you home? Why haven't you answered your phone? I had to leave, okay? Something came up. A work issue. I didn't mean to worry you. Stop lying to me, I hissed. The real owner of the apartment came back. We've discovered everything. The lease? Fake. The money? Gone. Your job? You quit a month ago. So don't insult me by pretending nothing happened. There was silence on the other end. A long one. Then, finally, I can explain, Maria, but not over the phone. Just don't do anything stupid, okay? Don't talk to anyone. Don't go to the police. I'll fix it. I'll be home soon. He said it like a promise, like he still had the right to make promises to me. Don't go to the police? I repeated, Are you serious? That's the first thing I did. His voice shifted. The warmth evaporated. Maria, he said lower now. Firmer. I mean it. You don't know what you're doing. You don't know who you're dealing with. Then tell me, I challenged. Tell me who you are. Because clearly, I've been sleeping next to a stranger for 5 years. The line went dead. I stood there, staring at the screen, heart hammering in my chest. He knows, I whispered when Andrew walked up beside me. He knows you're back. He knows we went to the police. He told me not to talk to anyone, not to do anything stupid. Andrew's face darkened. Then we need to move fast. That night, we double-checked all the documents, made more copies of everything we'd found, and backed it up in the cloud. Every detail, every name, every address. It was like building a case against a ghost. I was just starting to doze off on Andrew's couch, wrapped in a blanket when the doorbell rang. My heart jumped. Andrew paused, turned off the music, and walked cautiously to the peephole. Then he stepped back. It's him, he said. My blood turned to ice. Michael. He nodded. He's holding a bouquet of flowers. Of course he was, always with the performance. What do we do? I whispered. We don't open that door, Andrew said firmly. No matter what. The bell rang again. Then, a second time, longer, more impatient. Then came the knock. And then his voice. Maria, I know you're in there. Open the door. I need to talk to you. I walked toward the door on trembling legs, but I didn't answer. His voice grew louder, more insistent. Stop this nonsense. This is ridiculous. I can explain everything. I almost laughed. Explain everything? How do you explain 5 years of lies? Michael, I said from behind the door, how are you planning to explain the forged lease? The stolen money? The double life? There was silence. Then his voice changed. It dropped all pretense. You have no idea what you're getting involved in. Open the damn door, Maria. Now, before things get worse. Andrew stepped forward. If you don't leave right now, he said loudly, I'm calling the police. Michael's reaction was instant and vicious. And who the hell are you, he snapped. You think you know what's going on here? You don't. You're interfering in something that doesn't concern you. This is my property, Andrew replied coldly. And Maria is no longer your concern. You'll regret this, Michael growled. Both of you. Then footsteps. Heavy. Fast. The door to the building slammed shut. I collapsed against the wall, my breath ragged. "He threatened me," I whispered. "My husband actually threatened me." Andrew didn't say anything for a moment. Then he placed a hand on my shoulder. "No, he threatened a woman he no longer controls. That's different." And somehow that made all the difference. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I lay on the couch in Andrew's living room, wrapped in a soft blanket, listening to the city's distant hum and the occasional hiss of tires on wet pavement. Every sound made me flinch. Every passing headlight made my stomach tighten. It wasn't fear of violence. It was fear of facing the truth, that I'd wasted 5 years of my life on a man who never existed. Andrew brought me coffee the next morning, just like he had the day before. He didn't ask how I slept. He didn't try to make small talk. He just sat beside me at the kitchen table and poured a second cup for himself. That small kindness, silent, steady, meant more than any comforting words could have. After a few minutes, he looked up and asked softly, "What was Michael like in the beginning?" I didn't know how to answer. For a moment, I was afraid even remembering him would somehow give him power. But I made myself go there. "He was charming," I said slowly. "Not flashy, just warm, attentive." He remembered every little thing I said. My favorite music, my shift schedule, how I took my coffee. He always said he was amazed by what I did, how I cared for patients, how I stayed calm in emergencies. I thought it was love. I thought I had finally found someone who saw me. Andrew nodded thoughtfully. Maybe he did, or maybe he saw something he could use. That stung more than I expected. "I feel so stupid," I whispered. How did I not see what he was doing? How could I have been so blind? "You weren't blind," Andrew said. "You were committed. There's a difference. He played a role, Maria. He studied you, your habits, your vulnerabilities. That's not love. That's manipulation." I looked away, blinking back the sting in my eyes. "We had a joint savings account," I said after a pause. Or so I thought. But really, I was just depositing into an account he had full control over. He told me it was easier that way, more efficient for long-term planning. I didn't even question it. He made me feel like I didn't need to. Andrew didn't say, "I told you so." He didn't need to. I was already drowning in shame. But then he added gently, "You trusted someone you loved. That's not something to be ashamed of. That's something to grieve." That word, grieve, hit hard, because it was grief, not just for the money or the apartment or even the betrayal. I was grieving the life I thought I had, the man I thought I knew. Later that afternoon, we took a walk around the block just to get some air. The sky was the color of ash, and the wind carried the scent of rain and distant smoke. Everything looked gray, muted like my thoughts, but moving helped. So did talking. We stopped at a bakery near the corner. Andrew bought us 2 warm croissants and insisted I eat at least half. I didn't have much of an appetite, but I forced myself. The flaky crust and buttery texture reminded me of Sunday mornings, before everything fell apart. "Have you told anyone else?" he asked as we sat on a bench nearby. "Friends? Family?" I shook my head. I don't even know what I'd say. "Hi. It turns out my husband's a con artist, and I've been living in a stranger's apartment for 6 months? They'd think I lost my mind." "Maybe," he said with a small smile, "or maybe they'd think you're a survivor." That word settled in my chest like a slow ember. Survivor. Not victim. Not fool. Not wife of a fraud. Survivor. That night, as I helped Andrew prep dinner, just pasta with marinara and some chopped spinach, I realized something strange. Despite everything, I didn't feel like I was intruding. I didn't feel like a guest. His home didn't feel like a place I was crashing in temporarily. It felt safe. After dinner, we sat with tea in the living room, soft jazz playing low in the background. For the first time in days, my body began to unclench. "Andrew," I said, turning toward him, "thank you for everything. You didn't have to help me. You could have just kicked me out and let me deal with it alone. I'm not that kind of person, he replied simply. And I don't think you should be alone right now. There was no hidden meaning in his voice, no expectation, just quiet understanding, and maybe something deeper waiting. But neither of us rushed it. Not tonight. For the first time since this nightmare began, I allowed myself to hope. Detective Bennett had told me 2 days earlier that the net was closing in. Michael's aliases had matched multiple open cases across state lines. One of her contacts at the FBI even mentioned surveillance footage showing him at another property in Denver. That night, I lay awake wondering, when cornered, would he vanish completely or come crawling back like a man with nowhere left to run? I saw him again 3 days later. I had just come back from the hospital after meeting with HR to file for an extended leave. The air outside was cold and sharp, biting through my coat, and all I could think about was getting upstairs and slipping into the warmth of Andrew's apartment. But when I reached the building's front steps, I saw him. Michael. He was sitting on the concrete steps like a man with nowhere left to go. His clothes were wrinkled, his face unshaven, eyes bloodshot. The confident smile he used to wear like armor was gone. In its place was something raw, almost pitiful. "Maria," he said, standing as soon as he saw me. "Thank God." I didn't say a word. I didn't have the strength to yell. I just stared at him. "I've been waiting here for hours," he said, voice cracking. "Please, we need to talk. I have nothing to say to you. Please, just 5 minutes." He looked around nervously, as if expecting someone else to show up. "I screwed up, okay? I made some bad decisions. But it wasn't about you. I didn't do this to hurt you. You stole our money," I said, my voice flat. "You forged a lease, pretended you owned that apartment, disappeared for days, and threatened me when I didn't open the door. So don't tell me it wasn't about me." He ran a hand through his hair. I didn't know how else to fix it. "I owe money, serious money. There are people, they're dangerous. I thought I could get ahead of it before things got worse." "How much?" He hesitated. "1.5 million. I blinked. The number felt surreal. I laughed once, short bitter. "So you ran an entire real estate scam to pay off gambling debts?" "I didn't mean for it to go this far," he said quickly. "It started small, just some bets, small loans. But then I couldn't stop. And when I saw the opportunity, the apartment, the access, I thought if I could just make it through one big score, I could pay them off and come back clean." I stepped back, shaking my head. "You used me. You used our marriage, my job, my income. You made me believe we were building a life together, and the whole time you were playing house while building a criminal operation behind my back." "I didn't want to bring you into this," he said, voice rising with frustration. "That's why I tried to handle it alone." "You emptied the savings account," I said, "the one we built together. That wasn't handling it. That was betrayal." He looked desperate now, eyes scanning mine for something. Maybe sympathy, maybe permission. "I need help," he whispered. "If I don't pay them back, they'll come after me. After you." And there it was, the threat dressed up as concern. "Let me guess," I said, arms crossed. "You want me to take out a loan. Use my nurse's salary to bail you out of something you chose to do." "Just for now," he pleaded. "Just until I can get back on my feet. I'll get a real job, I'll make it right. Please, Maria. We were good once, weren't we?" I stared at him for a long, heavy moment. "You're not the man I married," I said, finally. "Maybe you never were." I turned toward the door. He grabbed my arm. "Please, don't do this." The touch made my skin crawl. I yanked my arm away. "You already did this," I said coldly. "I'm just choosing not to let it keep happening." Andrew opened the door just then, sensing something was wrong. He looked between us, jaw tightening. "You need to leave," he said to Michael. "Now." Michael bristled. "This is between me and my wife." "Ex-wife," I corrected. "Soon." Michael glared at me with something ugly in his eyes. "You think he's going to save you?" He doesn't know what kind of danger you're in." "I'm not the one who invited danger into my life," I said. "You did, and I won't let it bleed into mine anymore." He stood there for a second longer, fists clenched, breathing hard. Then he turned and walked away, disappearing down the sidewalk like a shadow finally giving up the shape of a man. Back inside, I collapsed into a chair and buried my face in my hands. Did I do the right thing? I whispered. Andrew crouched in front of me. Yes, absolutely. But what if he's telling the truth? What if those people come looking for him, and for me? Then we go to the police again. We stay smart, and we don't give in to fear. I looked at him, at the calm in his face, the steadiness of his presence, and for the first time in a very long time, I didn't feel alone. 3 weeks later, I sat in the courtroom. Michael didn't look at me when they brought him in. His suit was wrinkled, his face gaunt. I watched as he kept his eyes fixed on the floor, hands folded tightly in front of him. He looked like a man unraveling. And in truth, that's exactly what he was. The investigation had moved quickly once Detective Bennett connected the dots. Turns out Michael had been running similar scams for years, always with different names, always in different cities. Chicago was just his latest stop. The apartment, the fake job, even our marriage, it had all been part of a long con, threaded through charm, forged documents, and stolen identities. I gave my testimony calmly, clearly. The judge listened. So did the DA. No one interrupted. When I finished, I stepped down, walked past the defendant's table, and didn't look back. After the hearing, I didn't feel victorious. I felt empty but lighter. The weight was shifting. Not gone, but shifting. That night, back at Andrew's apartment, the place I now called home, I made tea, curled up on the couch, and opened my laptop. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't checking bank statements or police emails. I was opening a blank document. I didn't know what I was writing yet. Maybe it was a journal. Maybe it was a letter to myself. Maybe it was the start of something entirely new. But the cursor blinked, waiting patiently, and I let the words come. 3 days later, I found an envelope taped to the door. No return address. Just my name, written in sharp, almost angry letters. I opened it, slowly, heart pounding. Inside was a single note, handwritten. "You destroyed everything. Hope it was worth it." There was no signature, but I knew exactly who it was from. I called Detective Bennett. She sent someone to collect it. I wasn't scared, but I was done letting fear take up space in my life. "It's likely just a final power play," she told me over the phone. "A way to remind you he's still thinking about you. But that doesn't mean he still owns any part of your story." She was right, because that part of my life, the part where I kept looking for love in the face of danger, where I mistook obsession for devotion and silence for stability, was over. I was no longer a woman who flinched at every doorbell or second-guessed her instincts or let someone else define her worth. I was building something new now. Not just a home, not just a career, a self. Andrew helped. Quietly, patiently. He never tried to rush anything. Never tried to define what we were. Some days, we talked about nothing and laughed over coffee. Other days, I cried on his shoulder when the nightmares came back, and he held me like I deserved to be held. Not like a broken thing, but like something valuable. One morning, I woke up to the smell of pancakes. I followed it to the kitchen and found him flipping the last one, a towel slung over his shoulder, hair a mess. "You cook?" I asked, smiling despite myself. "Only under extreme emotional blackmail," he said with a grin. I sat down at the table, and he brought me a plate without asking how many I wanted. He just knew, and I realized maybe healing doesn't always come with a grand revelation. Sometimes it arrives quietly, wrapped in simple mornings, shared meals, and the slow trust of being seen. 6 months later, I walked into my first class at the local community college. Psychology 101. I was applying for a second degree. Trauma therapy. I wanted to help people who'd been through what I had. I wanted to give them words for things that once felt unspeakable. and maybe, someday, help them write their own endings or beginnings. Sometimes, the deepest betrayal doesn't come from enemies. It comes from those who once knew our morning routines, the shape of our silence, and how we take our coffee. And when the people we trust turn out to be illusions, it doesn't just break our hearts, it shakes the ground beneath our identity. But healing isn't about forgetting. It's about reclaiming your name, your voice, your worth. Maria didn't get revenge by exposing him. She got it by refusing to shrink, by turning pain into purpose, by stepping out of the shadow of what was and choosing to write a new story on her own terms. Because sometimes survival is the loudest victory, and peace is the sweetest form of justice.